This is not the film I wanted to make. This is the film that had to be made now. I was set to release this film in January 2020, and I'm glad I didn't. It would have been a mistake to release it without this first section, because the greatest economic reset in history is now here. Many portions of this film that I plan to complete may never be finished. I had to spend 3 months getting the answers to 3 questions. What are the true origins of the COVID-19 virus? What blew up the global economy? The virus or something else? How is the virus crisis advancing globalization as described in the Bible? Hi, I'm Leonard Ulrich, and this is the second feature presentation in the New World Order, Secret Societies, and Biblical Prophecy film series called The Illusion of Money. As you might have guessed by the series title, this film is from an informed Christian perspective. Faster than you can click away, you will be getting verified information here that few other sources will give, because they won't acknowledge facts which independently align with biblical truths. Now, where did the COVID-19 virus come from? China has a virus research program which is inseparable from its acknowledged weapons program. In May 2013, a sample of this new virus from this patient arrives in Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg through Ron Fouché of the Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. In March 2019, a shipment of deadly virus ends up in China, sent to it from the Level 4 Biolab in Winnipeg. This causes biowarfare experts around the world to question why Canada was sending lethal viruses to China. In July 2019, Dr. Jiangyou Chu, her biologist husband, and research associates are not only barred from the Winnipeg lab, but are all deported from the country because they are all Chinese nationals. Before being deported, Dr. Chu made at least 5 trips to assist biologists in China at the National Biosafety Lab in Wuhan. In February 2020, Dr. Frank Plummer, who headed up the lab in Winnipeg and received the virus from Saudi Arabia, dies a troublesome death in Kenya. On top of all this, China's 1,000 Talents Plan is an entire program dedicated to recruiting non-Chinese innovators through funding or to steal Western technology through bribery. The official explanation of the COVID-19 virus through the Chinese Communist Party was that the virus originated from the Wuhan wet market. This explanation quickly fell apart when the medical journal The Lancet noted that most of the members of the initial group of COVID-19 victims did not have contact with this area. Furthermore, patient 0, or the first person to contract COVID-19 in Wuhan, was never identified. In February 2020, the scientific journal Nature published an article entitled "A Pneumonia Outbreak Associated with the New Coronavirus of Probable Bat Origin." This article was a poor attempt to explain away the origins of the COVID-19 virus. Look at the first and last names of the scientific authors of this paper, Peng Zhu and Shi Zhengli. These are the same names that appeared in several scientific journals, such as these two in November 2015 and December 2007. Chinese scientists wanted to know for years how some bats could carry coronaviruses and not experience their symptoms, and whether this type of virus could mutate and be transmitted to humans to avoid another pandemic. In fact, Shi Zhengli gave a presentation in November 2018 called "Studies on Bat Coronaviruses and its Cross-Species Infection." This is confirmed by the paper of December 2007, written by Shi Zhengli, Peng Zhu, and others, which states that these scientists constructed and purified pseudoviruses based on HIV. COVID-19 is a Chinese-engineered pseudovirus that combines a coronavirus modified with HIV. Since it can be spread from human to human through droplets in the air, COVID-19 can be thought of as Chinese-made flying AIDS. The development of COVID-19 in China was ironically assisted with funding from America. An article in the October 2014 edition of The Scientist announced a moratorium on gain-of-function research where pathogens like SARS and MERS are manipulated to alter their capabilities, like giving the virus H5N1 the ability to transmit between ferrets through the air. The moratorium was announced due to a series of biosafety lapses at federal research facilities in the United States. In yet another example of a scientific publication trying to deny reality, a November 2015 article entitled "Lab-Made Coronavirus Triggers Debate" in The Scientist has been updated to prove that there is no evidence that COVID-19 leaked from a lab. The Wuhan Institute of Virology has officially denied that Wan Yongling is patient zero, stating that she has left the team and that she is in good health without providing any evidence for these claims. All her research papers have been removed since 2015, and her bio has been left blank. The Chinese Chernobyl of COVID-19 probably started with Huan Yongling. Institute researcher Chen Quanzhao blew the whistle using her real name that the Director General of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Wan Yanyi, was suspected of leaking the virus. China has a bioweapons program in response to America's bioweapons program. A neoconservative or fascist think tank known as the Project for the New American Century wrote a paper in December 2000 called Rebuilding America's Defenses. This paper stated that advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool. This should come as no surprise to students of Bible prophecy. Jesus himself in Matthew 24, verse 7, stated that nation shall rise against nation. The Greek word used for nation in this verse is ethnos. Waging war on an ethnic level through biological weapons is becoming a reality in the 21st century. COVID-19 did not start our current economic collapse. The collapse started in mid-September 2019 in America's repo market, where America's big banks treat the Federal Reserve like a pawn shop. These banks temporarily sell assets to the Federal Reserve for cash, then buy their own assets back from the Fed during the next working day to at most 30 days later. America's big banks are required to balance their books at the close of every working day, otherwise they would go into infinite amounts of debt. The number of Fortune 500 executives who resigned from their positions by the end of 2019 was very high, peaking to a record number in February 2020 when it became obvious that the Chinese Chernobyl would infect the rest of the world. The stock market also peaked in February 2020 when not even roughly $7 trillion pumped into Wall Street firms to buy back their own shares through the repo market could keep the financial bubble inflated. Bankers and globalists took advantage of a situation they did not create. They used COVID-19 as the cover for the controlled demolition of the economy, ensuring that the public spotlight wasn't on them. The virus also allowed the Illuminati financiers to profit once again by charging significant interest rate margins and administration fees on trillions of dollars that the Federal Reserve created out of thin air and distributed to the banks virtually for free. The controlled demolition of the economy is also further consolidating wealth. With so much of the world on lockdown, only very large businesses that were deemed to be essential services were allowed to remain open, while millions of small businesses were forced to close and take bankers' loans to survive. Central banks like the Federal Reserve are now buying junk bonds, triggering other banks and hedge funds to do the same thing to make another layer of guaranteed profits. The Federal Reserve is one step away from printing money out of thin air, buying stocks with it, and destroying the purchasing power of what is left of your savings. If you want to know where this is headed, look to Venezuela. Bill Gates was born in Seattle in 1955. Bill's father, William Gates II, was an attorney who was well connected with the elite and who co-founded Preston, Gates & Ellis, a law firm that had offices across the United States and China. William Gates helped to lead the state income tax initiative for Washington state. William Gates, along with Prescott Bush, sat on the board of Planned Parenthood, the largest chain of abortion mills in America. Planned Parenthood was founded by Margaret Sanger, a eugenicist whose staff had ties to the Nazi regime and who wanted to eliminate black people in America. Mary Gates was a school teacher who became chairman of the United Way, having been born into a banking family who had ties to the Federal Reserve System. Later in life, when pressed on whether there was something special, perhaps even divine about the human soul, Bill Gates replied, "I don't have any evidence on that." Bill Gates attended the prestigious Lakeside School, one of the few schools that had a computer room in the late 1960s, where Bill taught himself to code. While still in Lakeside School, Bill and his friend Paul Allen formed a company which got paid big money to write programs and find bugs in software. This is ironic because Bill Gates probably created the first computer virus. Bill and Paul created Microsoft, and the rest is history. Paul Allen has written in his memoirs that Bill tried to cut his share of Microsoft while he was recovering from cancer, and that Bill is a bully. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was created in 2000 when Bill donated most of his shares in Microsoft to the foundation in order to avoid paying taxes. It is now the largest private foundation in the world, currently managing around $50 billion. The foundation has collected billions from the Billionaires Club, whose members openly want a reduced population. The primary activity of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is vaccination. Bill Gates flew on the Lolita Express, Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, and made donations supervised by Jeff Epstein, who was running his own eugenics operations on top of a pedophile operation. An engineer employed by Bill Gates was arrested at the Gates estate for trafficking thousands of inappropriate photos of children. Intellectuals have always wanted to rule the masses. Plato's Republic discussed population control. Aristotle advanced abortion and infanticide. Sir Thomas Malthus wrote his essay on the principles of population in 1798, which advocated for diseases, wars, famines, and genocides as ways to check population growth. Charles Darwin's cousin, Sir Francis Galton, created the pseudoscience of eugenics, or the cultivation of race. The word eugenics comes from the Greek word meaning of noble birth. The founder of IBM, Thomas Watson, created a subsidiary business which maximized the labor output of the Nazi concentration camps. Top Nazi officials claimed in the Nuremberg trials that their eugenics program was modified from America's eugenics program. John Opel, CEO of IBM, was also on the board of directors of the United Way, along with chairwoman Mary Gates. Now that you have a basic history of the Gates family and of eugenics, it is no wonder that Bill Gates, who doesn't have any degrees, has become the world's most influential doctor and an open proponent of population control. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds the National Institutes of Health, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the Center for Disease Control. In fact, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the second largest funder of the World Health Organization, or WHO, second only to the United States taxpayer. The leadership of the WHO is corrupt to the core. A team of 6 investigators was overwhelmed with nearly 250 cases of sexual misconduct, bribery, and roughly $200 million spent on lavish travel in 2018 alone. The head of the WHO was Health Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the racist, violent, Marxist party which rules Ethiopia. Given the business ties between Ethiopia and China, and ideological ties between Ghebreyesus and Jinping, it's no wonder that the WHO never criticized China's handling of the coronavirus. Members of the Trump administration's coronavirus response team are pushing the Gates vaccination agenda. Dr. Anthony Fauci is on the Leadership Council of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Fauci told an audience at Georgetown University in January 2017 that there would be a surprise viral outbreak during the Trump presidency. Perhaps Dr. Fauci said this with such confidence because the Wuhan lab, which is the source of the COVID-19 pandemic, was experimenting on bat coronaviruses with funding given to it from the U.S. National Institutes of Health. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases within the National Institutes of Health was none other than Dr. Fauci. Dr. Deborah Birx is a member of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, a fund known for billions of dollars worth of fraud. The Global Fund was also funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Birx worked at the CDC with Dr. Robert Redfield, who is being investigated for research misconduct regarding the development of the AIDS vaccine. It is worth repeating that the CDC is partially funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In October 2019 in New York, just weeks before the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded Event 201, a simulation of what must be done when, of all things, a coronavirus outbreak occurs. 65 million people were projected to die during the Event 201 simulation, and a primary concern to the participants was control of disinformation. This is ironic because Event 201 produced fake news segments with mock news sets and actors who discussed how to control information, which quickly became internet and media policy. Event 201 participants included representatives from media corporations, the China CDC, and the World Economic Forum, which produced a website hundreds of layers deep on how to prepare for a pandemic. The website was designed in the shape of a coronavirus. Event 201 participants also received a stuffed mascot in the shape of a coronavirus. The Rockefeller Foundation was named after its founder, John D. Rockefeller. The oil and banking tycoon, a billionaire over 100 years ago, said that competition is a sin. David Rockefeller wrote on page 405 of his book Memoirs that some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global, political, and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I am guilty and I am proud of it. Pages 18 and 19 of the May 2010 report, in a section called Lockstep, are extremely interesting. These 2 pages describe a hypothetical future scenario which has become reality to a remarkable degree. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked across the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the US, but across borders. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantines for all citizens saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms. Biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulations of key industries. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. Private groups or individuals are using money and connections to shape public policy instead of politicians who should be accountable to the public. This is especially true when politicians are steered towards overreaching policies to avoid worst-case scenarios through fear. It is now apparent that the initial estimates of COVID-19 transmission and mortality rates are off between 2 and 3 orders of magnitude to promote fear-based compliance in the public. These estimates were given to politicians and the public by researchers indirectly funded by Bill Gates. The world has been taught to fear COVID-19 more than it should because of the numbers of deaths falsely attributed to the real virus. This is especially true in America, where the combination of federal compensation to hospitals dealing with COVID-19 and the official National Institutes of Health policy have distorted mortality rates from COVID-19 to the point where doctors are speaking out on television. When you tell people that even Dr. Anthony Fauci has recently admitted that COVID-19 has caused no more deaths than a bad flu season, they won't believe it because people have been traumatized over COVID-19 through fear and information control. COVID-19 eliminated protests against globalization, contributed to depopulation, increased dehumanization through social distancing, accelerated the anti-cash movement through perceived contamination, increased dependence on government, and shaped people's paradigms through information control. Because a pandemic accomplishes all of these goals, you can expect this card to be played again and again until the world complies through familiarity and fatigue. The next financial paradigm will be central bank digital currencies. A CBDC isn't money. It's not even a currency. It is a control system of social credits. Prices for things will be determined on an individual basis. Say or do the wrong thing, and the prices that you pay will rise. If you cross the line, you will be instantly banned from many options you take for granted. All other forms of payment will be banned. After all, you could be a terrorist or spreading disease. Hidden in the first round of American stimulus legislation was the proposal for FedCoin. The proposal was pulled from legislation at the last minute because technology and public acceptance weren't quite developed yet. That will change soon with the advent of 5G communications technologies that will monitor the entire planet, which are conveniently being installed without opposition while the world is on lockdown. The two final goals for the bankers and globalists are to make you a slave and to corrupt your body and soul to the point where they are irredeemable by Jesus. A patent application was recently granted to a corporation for a cryptocurrency system. The last sentence, taken directly from the abstract, reads as follows. The cryptocurrency system, communicatively coupled to the device of the user, may verify if the body activity data satisfies one or more conditions sent by the cryptocurrency system and award cryptocurrency to the user whose body activity data is verified. This description is the precise fulfillment of Revelation 18, where all goods are regulated in a Babylonian system of commerce, including the bodies and souls of men. Your body will be forced to perform tasks issued to you by central authorities in order to mine their cryptocurrency, making you a slave. The holder of this cryptocurrency system is Microsoft Technology Licensing, LLC, and the patent number is WO 2020-060606. In other words, the patent number is World Order 2020-666. Your vaccination record, which will be required for you to work, will be recorded on your body with an electronic tattoo, which precisely fulfills the definition of the mark of the beast as defined in Revelation 13. Funding for the development of this tattoo system came from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Bible even speaks of the vaccination agenda of the globalists in Revelation 18 verse 23, where the merchants and the great men of the earth use sorcery to deceive the nations. The Greek word used for sorceries in this verse is pharmakia, from which we get the word pharmaceuticals or drugs. As if all this wasn't obvious enough, Microsoft recently hired satanic artist Marina Abramovic to promote a fusion of Microsoft technology and her work. This technology will allow users to escape into a virtual internet world where you are allowed to experience and believe in anything but Jesus. The fact that elitists spend so much time convincing the world to follow their plans while they promote Satanism, attack the Bible, and fulfill Bible prophecy to the letter should tell you a few things. It should tell you that the plans of the elite are deceptive while the Bible is trustworthy. It should tell you that there is no political, economic, social, scientific, or environmental solution to a spiritual problem. It should tell you how unique Jesus is, because he is the only religious character who died for your mistakes so you don't have to. The best thing you can do with this presentation is accept Jesus' offer of salvation or tell others about it, the details of which are pinned to the top of the comments section below. The presence of Christ in your life, which is cultivated through prayer and reading the Bible, will tell you what to do next. The whole world is infected with the sin virus, and only Christ is the cure. Now, how did we get here? Well, that's also a long story. Let's say that Western civilization was a jet, and we could wind the clock back.